Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to just return to the oversight plan as proposed, which includes a section on freedom of speech, including efforts by some colleges. The subcommittee will examine restraints on free speech, including efforts by some colleges and universities to limit protests, speeches, distribution of literature, petitions, and other expressive activities. Now, the ranking member proposed eliminating the oversight related to the suppression of free speech at colleges and universities, and the individual proposing this amendment supported that change, which is ironic because the place in American society where anti-Semitism has been most pronounced, where it's been emanating from, is our universities. And a favored tool of the forces of anti-Semitism at our universities is to silence pro-Israel views and to make Jewish students and speakers feel unwelcome and excluded from campus life. It's so extreme that just this last fall, 9 student groups at Berkeley Law School actually amended their bylaws to prohibit speakers who express support for Israel. This was condemned by the American Jewish Committee and 35 other Jewish organizations as a vicious attempt to marginalize and stigmatize the Jewish, Israeli, and pro-Israel community. This is unabashed anti-Semitism, they said. In fact, this action has now led to a lawsuit alleging that it violates Title VI of the Federal Civil Rights Act, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, or national origin at programs that receive federal assistance. As a state representative, I proposed legislation to protect freedom of speech on college campuses, and the leading supporters were dozens of Jewish American groups because they have experienced the nexus between the suppression of free speech at our universities and rising anti-Semitism. So I'm sorry, but it's really hard for me to accept this proposed amendment as anything more than a political stunt when the individual who is proposing it just himself voted to limit oversight of a leading source of anti-Semitism in this country.
Will the gentleman yield? Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, I yield.
So if I understand the gentleman's point, because the gentleman is concerned about anti-Semitism on college campuses, a concern, by the way, that I share, he's going to oppose an amendment that would ask us to oversee acts of anti-Semitism. Others of my colleagues apparently similarly will oppose the amendment. And I suppose the rationale would be if this were a resolution on the floor condemning anti-Semitism, they would oppose that too because it doesn't include other forms of hate. I hardly see how the presence of acts that my colleague from California and I would both disagree with that have an anti-Semitic character should be used to justify opposition to an amendment that says we should oversee domestic terrorism motivated by all forms of bigotry, including anti-Semitism. To me, the one does not lead to the other. Rather, it ought to lead to support for the amendment, not opposition. And I yield back to the gentleman.
I reclaim my time and yield to Mr. Bach.